a lot more in-group, out-group hostile, right? If you're our friend, we love you to death. But if you're not one of us and you mess with one of us, oh, forget it. And the predominant method of enforcement of the female collective in these settings is exclusion, whereas the predominant method of resolution in the male community is apology, agreement, and moving forward. Now, humans were smarter than monkeys, most not vouching for the cast members of the Jersey Shore. But in instances of different costs and benefit potentials, we would expect to see these sorts of differences emerge. And I think the key to understanding why it is that such different social dynamics exist amongst the men and the women on the show can be explained if you know a bit about traditional Italian culture and you watch the episode where Vinny's parents come to visit. Vinny's parents come to visit, and Vinny explains it pretty straightforward. He's like, my mother is traditional Italian. She has multiple suitcases filled with food and new underwear for Vinny. She never sits down and cleans the entire house in the course of her visit to the Jersey Shore. She cooks a 12-course meal for everyone to eat and never herself sits down to enjoy the food. And all of the cast members say, yes, this is a wonderful part of our culture, and this is the way you identify sort of true old-style Italian women. Now, I can't help but recognize how rational even the seemingly irrational behaviors amongst the women on the show seems in light of this future potential. In other words, if you really pay attention to Sammy and Ronnie's relationship, it seems like she just sparks crazy drama and tries to chase him off, so to speak, which to me seems like a trial or filter mechanism to only sort back those suitors who she'll have a degree of relative power over so as to not become this basic slave to a large extended Italian family. The men looking at their sort of future consumption of being a part of an Italian family is a cushy gig. You have someone else to sort of wait on you hand and foot. Whereas women looking into that future, I would think, would mean a very different set of strategies for engaging in relationship behaviors in the present sense. Ignorance and uncertainty drives conflict. This is true in all drama. It's true in pretty much all television. If you watch and pay attention or take literature or read seriously Shakespeare and stuff, there's an attention to what it is that the audience knows versus what bits of information characters know that motivate things like drama and tension. If you watch the show, you can recognize that whenever people in the house are mad at each other, it's because of differing understandings of the course of events that you, the audience, know a more objective interpretation of. And so oftentimes when they have different opinions about how things transpired is when they get frustrated with one another. So in general, what you see happen is that dialogue, sharing of knowledge, exposing knowledge is often an explicitly effective strategy at avoiding conflict. When they air everything out on the table and everybody tells everyone what everyone else knows, they call family meetings or house meetings. And it's often a very effective way at mitigating the forms of hostility that have developed. Experimentation and compromise drive resolution. What do I mean by experimentation? Again, van der Waal is a great source of recognizing how animal species in general are sort of inherent Kersnerian entrepreneurs. In these processes of peacemaking amongst primates, he notices that evolutionarily, species develop things like kissing and hugging and patting and touching, and the things that we commonly impute with emotion and intimacy are in fact evolutionary devices for resolving conflict. And basically, early primate observers, social scientists, recognize that or hypothesized that animal species would merely just try things. And they would try things that were associated with objectively nonviolent behaviors. So when you're a relatively ignorant sort of ape, and you know that things like sex and humor are oftentimes devoid of violence, those are the sort of things that you try to bring to mind in the mind's eye of the person who's very upset with you. So you try to get them to smile and crack a joke. And so in these sort of peacemaking strategies amongst primates, they observe that monkeys make silly faces at one another. They try to kiss each other. They hug each other. They even fondle each other's genitals. It's very strange. But when you watch someone like The Situation try to apologize when the other characters are mad at him, it oftentimes involves jokes, sort of awkward postures. It's like, come on. And even times just explicit humor. Snooki's often mad at people. And so given that she's like yay tall and herself sort of a drunken clown, he'll often, if she's mad at him, just pick her up and like spin her around his head, and then she'll be like, ha ha ha, and everything goes back to normal. It's not science, but it works. So experimentation, compromise, drive, resolution. Institutions emerge and agents, at least they perceive clear, objective, and quantifiable social norms. In other words, they have very delineated concepts of right and wrong in a variety of their sort of obscure lifestyles. Everything from cheating on your boyfriend is only appropriate in these circumstances. Like if you have a fight with your girlfriend before you go to the club and then you do all sorts of things with other people, like that's fine so long as you said, oh, we're on a break. Then everything is totally acceptable and tolerant once you're there. But if you didn't say that, if you said, all right, we'll talk about this when I get back, whoa, then whatever you did at the club is totally inappropriate. And then there's all sorts of bro codes that govern the behavior as to whether or not the guys who went with you to the club are allowed to share information about what you did. And whether or not you'd be legitimate in being upset with them for sharing that information, or you should grow to expect it. So again, formal types of institutions do seem to emerge in this strange context. Private languages, GTL, gym, tan, laundry, DTF down to fornicate, FTD, fresh to death. That means that like you're just super cool. Mint, basically a synonym for FTD. Creep, crushing it. Vibe is basically sensing the conditions of pre-smushing. Grenade, again, overweight, unattractive women. Landmines, underweight, unattractive women. Hippopotamus, more than overweight, unattractive women. Gorillas and juice heads, men presumably on steroids. Archetypal Guidos, so to speak. Interestingly enough, these forms of language, there's even a recognition that there are functional reasons to have an ability to communicate with the people who are in your group through secret language. So in the heat of the club, with thumping bass making verbal communication impossible, Pauly D and I, situation in this circumstance, can exchange a series of low fives that gets across everything necessary. For instance, 3 low fives means let's go creep on some chicks, whereas 2 low fives followed by a chest bump means let's go get drinks and then go creep on chicks. Interestingly enough, the end of season 3 has what I think is actually the most fascinating conflict resolution episode, where Pauly D and JWoww are discussing the ongoing dramas that exist between Ronnie and Sammy. And they're actually counting on their fingers reciprocity of like cheating on each other. It was like, well, she talked to that guy that he didn't know about, so that's 1 on her. And then he 3-way kissed when he got wasted at bed in Miami, so that's 1 on him. right? And they're sort of keeping relationship score. Like there's a formal calculus going on here. And they're trying desperately to find a common ground so as to move forward, to find a political economy of forgiveness. And so in my mind, Pauly D and JWoww are like the arbiters of relationship feuding. And again, the precision and the calculative nature of these institutions demonstrates, I think, their